Hello and welcome to the Rails East Peoria Service Center. I'm Laura Turner, President of the Rails Board, and I call this meeting to order on Friday, August 24th at 1 p.m. And Emily, can you call the roll?
Sure. Christine Barr. Dave Berry.
Here.
Sue Busenbark.
Here.
Michael Campbell.
Here.
Gwen Gregory.
Here.
Liza Hickey.
Here.
Jay Caston.
Here.
Paul Mills.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Daisy Porter Reynolds.
Here.
Dee Reynolds. Nadia Shake.
Here.
Michelle Simmons.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Laura Turner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Emily. We will move on to recognition of guests and announcements. Let's start in East Peoria. Can we have guests introduce themselves?
Where would you like to start?
Here? Here in
start.
East Peoria.
Right, so I'll start.
Oh,
So-
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's all right.
Okay.
Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
Jane Plass Rails. Emily Keister Rails.
Louise Savella, Rails.
Jim Krieger, Rails.
Karen Egan, Illinois State Library.
Deborah Aggert, Illinois State Library. Gwen Harrison, Illinois State Library. Courtney Young, Avon Public Library.
Barbara Love, Kewanee Public Library.
Mary Witt Rails.
Anna Beam, Rails.
Robert Morgan, Rails. Joe Philippek, Rails.
Mark Hatch, Rails.
Wesley Smith, Rails.
John Richmond, Alpha Park Public Library District.
Erica Laughlin, Rails RSA.
Martha Troxel, Rails RSA.
Randall Yelverton, URA Public Library.
And Veronica Pitchford Rails.
Okay, well, thank you to come to East Peoria. It's always nice to see a full room. Okay, we will move on. Are there any guests in Burr Ridge?
Ann Slaughter.
Bill Getz, Rails. That's
Okay, any guests? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You just said that's it.
That's it. Oh, that's it. Okay. Any guests in Bolingbrook?
I don't think anybody's there.
No. Cole Valley?
Oh, it's dark.
No.
Galesburg? Let's start to. Illinois State Library, I think you're here.
No,
Illinois State Library?
Greg McCormick.
How come you're not here?
Don't ask.
In Monmouth College.
I'm the only one here.
Okay, so we have Michelle at Monmouth.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Did we have any public comments at any of the sites? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Daisy, second by Jay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, item 6.2, Rails Board minutes of the July 26, 2018 regular meeting. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of the July 26, 2018 Rails Board meeting?
So moved.
So moved by Paul. Can we have a second?
Oh, Scott.
Scott, sorry. Well, you're right next to each other in your class. All have glasses. Don't sit next to each other anymore. Do we have a second? Seconded by Tom. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
And I will abstain, for the,
I should have asked that.
David Barry abstaining.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
You do the special board minutes also.
What's that?
Yeah.
The special meeting.
Right,
minutes
two
also.
individual motions rather than
okay.
one joint motion.
Okay.
We could have done it in a joint motion, but
So what do we need
like,
to do here?
so 6.1,
Or two
under 6.1 and 6.2 are separate motions we need.
Two
Or-
sets of minutes.
Oh, I
Work.
see. I am so sorry. Okay, so we did the motion for the regular board meeting, right? Okay. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of the July 26, 2018 Rails Special Board Meeting?
So moved. I'm Paul.
Moved by Paul,
Second by Michael.
second by Michael. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Do we have any abstentions?
I'm abstaining,
Motion
Dave
carried.
Perry.
Okay,
This was the orientation.
Yeah.
So I think also you were not there, Scott? Is that correct?
Came at the
You came at, oh, so you were there. Okay. I just can't remember.
so Dave is our only
Why would it be a
abstention.
draft? We can approve just a.
Motion carried.
It's only a draft now.
Okay, sorry about that little glitch. All right, next we have Jim. Will you please present the financial report?
Happy to. Better get in front of the camera. You have in your board package the financial report for the month of July. It's the first month of our fiscal year, so there's no trends or anything that can be developed from that. But some of our highlights are we had $10.8 million in cash and investments, which would fund just over 11 months of operations. We still have $6.3 million owed by the state for area and per capita grant pertaining to fiscal year 18, and we don't know when that will come, but it will. In July, our major activity is group purchases. The EBSCO billing is that month. That's over $400,000. And as you'll see later, our expenditures were very high, but those amounts are reimbursed within a month or so after we paid for it. But about half of our annual activity on group purchases is in the first month of the year, as is also about 2/3 of our e-read. So we have disproportionate, but we do budget it that way, so you don't see huge variances. Otherwise, in our personnel expenditures, we're about $25,000 under budget. We have 2 new budgeted positions that we're in the process of filling, but we didn't in that month. And we had no July capital projects. We did have our tuck pointing bill that we just paid in August, about $30,000. That project went very well. It went through the Naperville bidding process that you approved a few months ago, and we're very happy with the price on that. And we do have several vehicles on order, and we should be seeing those soon. One event that took place after, just this past week, is that we had on our investment cash equivalents and investment schedule, we were showing $4,089,000 in change of a CD investment, which matured on August 16th. They were at 1.62, which was a good rate at the time. The renewal rate offered was 2.11 initially offered, and then they did up it. But our money market rate that we're getting at Wintrust, which is floating with the market, is currently at 2.21%. So had we renewed our 6-month CDs, we probably would have lagged the market almost certainly. So we have moved all $4 million of that into the money market account at Wintrust. So we have over $7 million there. So currently our banking situation is that we have money at Illinois Funds, which is one approved investment depository, and the rest of our funds are at Wintrust. We're also authorized to invest with PMA again, should we do that, as well as MB Financial, which we used in the past for talking books, and the private bank, which we did a 6-month CD. But I don't see us going anywhere other than maybe hopefully back to PMA for CDs at some point. So that is our banking situation. Can I answer any questions?
I have a question. On the page you're talking about cash equivalents and investments, you have a checking account at Hinsdale Bank and Trust. that doesn't have any interest?
That does not earn interest.
Does
But
not.
we get some break on fees depending on what our balance is.
And that changes daily, I would think.
It's not daily, but
Okay.
if we get down real low, we'll start seeing more in the way of fees. But there is a offsetting fee arrangement.
Thank you.
Depending on our balance. But we found it advantageous to keep more money in the money market now that rates are over 2%.
Thank you.
So,
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Jim. May I have a motion for approval of the financial report for July 2018?
So moved.
So moved by Paul, second by Daisy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. So we'll move to approval of expenditures July 2018. Jim?
yes, at the end of your report is our expenditure list by vendor. The total for July was $1,703,442.41. And normally it's, most months it's around 800 to 900,000, but as I mentioned, we did the group purchasing. EBSCO alone was 441,000. And we also, did our two payments to Swan and Prairie Cat, which were over 100,000 each this month. Are there any questions on any of the details in the expenditure report?
Okay, may I have a motion for approval of the check voucher register for July 2018 in the amount of $1,703,442.41?
So moved.
Moved by Michael,
Second?
second by Jay. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Dave Barry,
Yes.
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Michael Campbell,
Yes.
Glenn Gregory,
Yes.
Liza Hickey,
Yes.
Jay Caston,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Stacy Porter Reynolds,
Yes.
Nadia Shake,
Yes.
Michelle Simmons,
Yes.
Tom Stagg,
Yes.
Laura Turner.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you, Jim. Okay, we will move on to reports. I do not have a report as the Rails Board President, so we will move on to Paul from the Consortium Committee.
No report, ma'am.
Okay. We have not had an executive committee meeting, so we'll move on. We'll go back to Paul again for the policy committee.
Thank you, ma'am. We do have two items that are actually listed under new business, the fiscal accountability policy and the meeting by electronic means. As a reminder, the fiscal accountability policy was something that actually came up at last month's board meeting. Was suggested that we look at certain parts of it that we'll cover in more detail under new business.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we will go to Jane with the resource sharing report.
Committee has not met, so no report.
Okay. No meetings makes for quick meetings. Okay, next we have Dee with the Rails report.
Yes, I'm sorry, I do have a report.
That's good though, we need some.
Okay. So, all right, so I do have a couple of new items in addition to my written report. I wanted to thank you all for those of you who attended the orientation and filled out the survey that Mary sent out. I wanted to thank you for doing that and just give you a little news about that. It was generally very favorable about the orientation, which is certainly good. There were some suggestions which we're going to work on in some detail, but to implement and talk with you about. I just wanted to give you some of the highlights. There were more questions about committees, and we're going to talk. There's an item for committees, so I think we'll talk about that under committees. There was a question about other professional or the professional development opportunities for boards, and we're doing a conference report, so I think that might give you some insight. But certainly, we are very interested in supporting board in terms of attending professional development events. A request for an org chart. I thought we gave you an organization chart, but if we didn't, we will get you one. And also more information about what staff do and connecting them kind of with who they are, with what they do. And as a matter of fact, due to just the evaluation that we did in general over the past few months, we are instituting a new agenda item, which is Service of the Month report, this very day. So where staff are going to be making reports about what they do, just so you all will have more insight. And so will the members, as far as that goes. So, and first up this month will be, I think, Joe and Louise talking about training. Suggestion that we, the board, help the board, focus and discuss the long-term, kind of long-term issues and the strategic plan, which we're going to do today. That, we didn't spend enough time on the job description, and, be interesting to know more about board expectations of board members. So we'll certainly be taking that up. I apologize for not spending more time on that. And then a question about KPIs, key performance indicators. And this is always hard in libraries because we don't always do things that are very quantifiable, unfortunately. But we have, one of the reasons that we did take on the evaluation of Rails services, the first one we did last year was the evaluation of member visits, is that we're looking at impact on members and libraries, well, members and end users. And so I'm hoping we can get at, some of that, and, the real reason, what's the impact of what you do, which is kind of a key performance indicator, I guess. But we can talk more about that for sure. I just wanted, to go over that a little bit. And again, as I say, to thank you for filling it out, because it's extremely helpful. And also, Wednesday, Jane and Mark and I were in Springfield meeting with the staff at the State Library, including Deb, who's here, and Karen, and I think you were there, Gwen. Yes? Yeah. Sorry, but I don't. And Greg, who is not here for today. And we met about delivery and the report that the Laboratory for Applied Spatial Analysis did for us. They're headquartered down at SIU Edwardsville. And we asked them to do this study to help us find more efficient ways of doing delivery. It's all very much tied in with our facilities as well, because for the board members here today, we just toured the a delivery hub in East Peoria, which we have to vacate at some point because the landlord wants it back. And part of and we're going to be presenting this study to the board, I think, next month. But Heartland and Carly were also at the meeting in Springfield, because it very much affects, obviously, those organizations are involved in delivery as well. And one of the possible recommendations that may be implemented, we don't know, we have to do some further study with Heartland and the State Library, is that the transfer hub should be, in other words, the place where everybody meets up and transfers the items and then goes back out again. Maybe it should be in East Peoria. So, as opposed to Champaign, because it would be more efficient. So all of a sudden you see, we have to move. So if we have to move and we that's one of the recommendations. We have to figure out how to do. It's kind of what comes first, you know. So I imagine Greg will be saying more during his report about the state library. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about my written report. I did say a little bit about the meeting in there, the staff in service day, which was very successful, and Lassa was there, and they were a huge hit. I'm happy to answer questions.
Not a question, but I'd love it if Lassa, am I pronouncing them correctly?
Yes.
If they would be able to present to the board, love to hear.
Yes.
Love to hear what they have to say.
That is our goal.
Yeah.
Yes. So that might make the timing of the report a little different. I mean, maybe, I don't know if they're going to be busy next month at this, you know, for the board meeting, but yes, it is way better. They were at the state, I think I said they were at the state library. And
what does LASA stand for again?
Laboratory for Applied Spatial Analysis.
Okay.
So they
Thanks.
look at things with GIS
Right.
and kind
Sure.
of, you know, it's really fascinating. They do work, I think I said this in my report, they do work with school districts on figuring out the best bus routes. They do work for the college, for the university. They mapped like where the college freshmen are, where the freshmen are, and kind of, you know, looking at like where their enrollment is changing. I mean, it's quite fascinating, really. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay. I think we are moving on to 7.3.2. Whoop. We are going to the Service of the Month report, trustee training, discussion only, and we have Joe and Louise who are going to present.
Which is, as I said, this brand new
Right.
topic.
Yes. Thank you for being our first,
Right.
our guinea pigs.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll stand here in solidarity. I already introduced myself 5 times, so it's do it again. So, Joe Philippek, Director of Continuing Education Consulting. I'm here with
Louise Savela, continuing education specialist. Yes.
So what we're talking about is trustee training resources. So probably as a lot of you know, we do a lot in the way of training for our member library staff, but trustees are our members too. And I would say since I began 4.5 years ago, I think the need and desire to have more in the way of trustee training has really continued to grow. So we're trying to do more for trustees, and so our intent today is to tell you a little bit about that, both from the perspective of what we try to organize and facilitate, and then also making you aware of what else is out there. So I think for starters, Louise is going to talk a little about, and there is a sheet in your packet that outlines some of these things. So I think Louise will start with the Rails sort of focus resources.
So we just wanted to highlight a few things on your sheet there. We have a hotline for the Freedom of Information Act and Open Meetings Act. We've partnered with Ansel Glink, a law firm, to answer member questions about FOIA or OMA. This is available to libraries statewide, and they can use it. And it's for basic questions like, you know, are trustees' text messages subject to FOIA if they use their personal phone, or if a trustee cannot make it to a meeting, can they participate electronically? So that hotline is available for all Illinois library directors or FOIA OMA officers. We have on our website a trustee training page that kind of coordinates everything in one place for trustees. You'll find on that page any upcoming events for trustee training. We regularly offer workshops, for example, with Julie Tappendorf from Ansel Glink to do FOIA or OMA training and other topics. We also have had Nancy Sylvester, who's a certified parliamentarian. Some of you may have met her. She'll be at ILA this fall, but we have workshops with her regularly. So you'll find on this Rails trustee training page upcoming events. You'll also find links to past events that we've recorded. It's a webinar, and some of the topics you'll find that would interest trustees are on training on budgets and levies, strategic planning, safety in the library, and of course that would also links out to the complete Rails CE archives, which there's over 130 different recordings right now on different topics. And then we also wanted to make you aware of 2 online training resources we have through United for Libraries with the American Library Association. One is called Short Takes for Trustees, which is a series of very short videos. They're all 8 to 10 minutes each on topics of what it means to be a trustee and responsibilities. And that's something that Rails actually worked with United for Libraries to bring these about. It's nice that they're short because trustees can show them during a monthly board meeting and watch them and have a discussion. And for more in-depth training, United for Libraries also has Trustee Academy, which are about an hour long and more detailed. And those 2 are also, so there's some advocacy topics in there, intellectual freedom and working with your director, things like that. And the Trustee Academy and Short Takes for Trustees, there's a login required, and it's on this sheet for you. You can click those links to get in and log into that, or you can even go through the ALA's website or just Google it, things like that.
So that's that's a good number of resources, but there's so much more out there, and like any continuing education, you can't have enough of it. Can't be offered in different formats, locations, times of the year. All of that. So there's room for everybody to do this. And so not only do we want to push out our content and resources, but make trustees throughout Rails aware of what else is out there. So that's on the second page of your handout. I would mention, our networking groups throughout Rails continue to do a lot of great continuing education. Laconia and Atlas are 2 that I mentioned in those resources that every year always have some kind of trustee banquet or trustee workshop. Not only a good learning opportunity, but also a great networking opportunity for trustees. Of course, we have ILA Trustee Forum, which if you want to know more about Jay, is a good one to know. I believe it's in February that the workshop is offered every year. Yep, in Oak Brook, and is a full day, number of different speakers on trustee topics, and I think especially for new trustees, just gives a really great overview. HR, legal, all the kind of things that a trustee needs to know about. ILA Trustee Day, of course, at ILA. Dee might mention that in her report, but that's another one where there's a lot of good speakers and trustee-centric sort of content, and you're there amongst your people, your trustees. And I would say as well that with Illinois State Library staff here, they have a trustee sort of resource page that I think points to a lot of good trustee resources. Trustee fact files and the Illinois Public Library Trustee Manual being 2 that I think, especially for onboarding, is really just a great overview of trustee responsibilities and other need-to-know information. So that page on the Illinois State Library's website, I think, is very useful as well. I would also say, just in general, and kind of as we wrap up here, that Rails staff is perhaps one of the most important resources that we have for trustees, and I think that this role that we have has grown again over the last few years, so that trustees and directors, it's not uncommon for us, maybe on a weekly basis to get a phone call or some other communication from a trustee, Dee, Veranda, myself, Louise, and others, and whether it's to offer some guidance, whether to provide some information. I think we feel very good that our members are thinking of Rails to reach out to us for answers to these questions. It might be a single phone call, it might be a series of phone calls, and sometimes it might be something where we decide to go visit.
You don't have any calls from Veranda Pitchford. Don't say.
It's kind of like funny on so many levels. So, phone and Siri, I guess, is still learning. Anyway, so I was going to mention that he, for example, has visited board meetings, as she did a few weeks ago, and Veranda and myself and Dee are going to Calumet Park. And I'm trying not to say anything that sounds like SIRI right now. To actually talk to that board and go through some training with that board. So that's a role we're increasingly playing. I think it's an important one. We're glad to do that. I'll close by saying that I think for a lot of libraries, getting trustees to attend any kind of training might be icing on the cake. They just, if a board member shows up for the board meeting, that's what they want. They want a board member who reads the board packet. In some communities, even finding someone who will serve on the board is a challenge. But we also know the consequences of having board members who don't understand their role or and otherwise are kind of uneducated on what it means to be a trustee. So we continue to feel that this is an important topic for us to address, and we'll keep striving to do more and to do better at engaging and training trustees across rails. So I think with that, we will stop and happy to take questions or any comments. And if not, our contact info is on there. You can always feel free to reach out to Louise or myself. Yes, Deb.
This is Deborah Agger from the Illinois State Library, and I appreciate the references to the State Library. I'd like a link to our full page on CyberDrive because we have the administrative ready reference, which has suggested policies and such too.
Good.
Some of you did reference the manual and others too, but I'd like to the whole thing where it has all the trustee stuff because we're looking at that also. We're very involved.
Good point. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now it's time for the Illinois State Library report, and thank you for joining us in person. Well.
Sorry.
I bet I'll be here next time.
Get me on the camera. So, well, good afternoon and greetings from Secretary White and everyone here at the State Library, along with the three of my colleagues who are there. I'm very pleased that they could be there today and not so pleased that other activities have kept me away. So, but I will stay through this and give a report. I guess, of everything on your agenda, the report that was just given by Joe and Louise, that's probably, I couldn't commend you more for that right now. I would say that the issue of public library trustees in this state, and we noticed this a year ago, that this was becoming a larger and larger issue, but trustee education, making them aware of their responsibilities, or even at this point aware of the fact that these trustees are required by law, because quite honestly, we have seen some boards, and again, just this week, disappearing before our very eyes. That is a problem. It's taken, considerable amount of time, Dee's own time, other staff there at the library system. It's an issue, though, that is statewide, and you're going to be hearing, I think, much, much more from our office regarding that. One thing that we have been doing here is going back through all of the statutes regarding the local library laws. And there's something very particularly important for public library districts. And we realize that in the reporting that is done with all public libraries, this is not being accomplished right now, but the fact those vacancies or appointments or elections are to be reported to the state and to the county within 60 days. Vacancies are to be addressed without delay, according to law. Another issue, and as Joe mentioned, that is very, very difficult for libraries to address right now is finding people of interest, but you will be seeing some, or libraries I should say, public libraries will be seeing something in the very near future regarding this coming out from the state. We'll be very much focused, there are reporting requirements right now of what library districts must do. We're also very interested in, the efforts of the Illinois Library Association. We've had discussions with them regarding their trustee day at the upcoming association conference, and we're more than pleased that we're giving them some funding to help with that. We need to put some dollars behind this. We're looking at not only a way to point people to what the resources are available to the trustees, but actually put the printed items in their hands. And that is going to be coming out in the very near future too, I believe. So again, thank you for your efforts in this. It is a big deal right now in the state, and anything we can do working together on this issue, I think is in the best interest of libraries across the state. A few other things. You'll be seeing announcements, and some came out in our e-news today. Public library per capita grant applications will be going out very, very shortly. Those will be due January 15th, 2019. Live and Learn Public Library construction grant applications are up and available. Those are due at the State Library January 11th. For school libraries, their FY19 grant applications are also available. Those are due October 15 here at the Illinois State Library. The Illinois Interlibrary Loan Traffic Survey, which is part of compliance for membership in a library system. That survey is now available to all libraries. It is due March 31, 2019. Dee did mention the meeting that occurred here this Wednesday. Again, I commend Rails for their work with Lassa on that study. I think that was one of the better meetings as far as something that we can see can have an immediate impact on services for both library systems, for services to the academic libraries with our funding of the Illinois Library Delivery System, that connection piece that is so critical for statewide delivery to occur. I believe as from that discussion, almost immediately, Heartland, and we'll follow up with them next week, I believe they're going to move forward with having Lassa incorporate their data into the same study. It might change the end result a little bit, but it's something that as we're looking for results, and I think an economies of scale or improved dollars and cost for the library system specifically, or services that and how it's more efficient as far as time and miles for both library systems, that we're looking to try to have something moving forward as soon as FY20, which would be next July. So we have a much shorter time frame on that, and I think we will see some results from that. The study in itself, if you just look at the print, it's maybe less impressive and confusing, but when you really hear them explain it, which was so important, I think, the other day, and which your board is interested in hearing too, it becomes all the more clear, and it really is a great group. We're happy that this has been pursued, and hopefully we can all see some results of this very, very soon. In the next few weeks, and some of your members, if not some of you, may be here in Springfield for the Association for Rural and Small Libraries Conference. It's It's a nationwide conference. We understand now that registration has surpassed any other efforts for this conference. It exceeds 600 libraries. I will say that the vast majority of those are not Illinois libraries, which is fine too, but we're excited to welcome them here. There is a reception on September 12th here at the State Library where I guess we expect around 450 of the attendees to be here that evening, so it will be quite a few busy days. And then, of course, Carla Hayden from the Library of Congress will be at that conference on September 14th. So a lot going on in the next few weeks, and we are moving forward with implementation of FY19. I also did note the issue of, yes, we do owe the systems FY18 money along with many other grantees. Been in contact with public libraries recently who have been following up on payment of their FY18 public library per capita grants as well. Questions for the State Library?
Okay, I don't think we have no. I don't think we have any questions here. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
And we will move on. We will move on to new business. Paul, will you handle the recommendations from the policy committee?
Certainly, unless you wanted to do that. Okay.
Let's fight over it, Paul.
Well, it said ask, but I think it's Paul, you will handle.
Yes. Those instructions are clear, ma'am. In your packet, you did have two policy revisions for the board's consideration. The first is the fiscal accountability policy, and as in Dee's cover memo notes, she highlights what the key changes are. A lot of this was driven by the discussion the board had at its July meeting regarding the donation of a security. That language was added to this policy to reflect that. The other key change, as you may recall, there was the statutory change, changing the requirement to obtain competitive bids from $20,000 to $25,000 per changes in the state law. And also, we did remove references to the Talking Book and Braille services, as those services are no longer part of the regional library system's responsibility. I would like to note that we did make a minor error in the draft that was included. Specifically, if you look at page 8 of 9 of the fiscal accountability policy, we added a line at the end that we thought would help provide some flexibility for the board. But we worded it in such a way saying that gifts would be accepted if they're determined not to be in the best interest of the system, where that was actually meant to say determined to be in the best interest of the system. Negatives are important to consider. Happy to answer any questions about the draft revision. I'd like to say the policy committee, this is our first time meeting as this particular constituted group, and I thought we had a really great conversation.
I would move that we approve the revised fiscal accountability policy.
As amended?
With the amendment.
As amended.
I second.
Did you get that, Emily? Moved by Scott. Okay. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. So I have a motion to accept the policy committee's recommendation for the changes to the meeting by electronic means policy.
There is also, ma'am, in your packet, in everyone's packet, a memo also that Dee drafted regarding changes to the meetings via electronic means. When the state's Open Meetings Act statute was amended many years ago to provide for electronic meetings for regional library systems and other organizations that I think cover more than 4,500 square miles, one of the requirements was that there had to be a policy in place for that to be done. When Rails was formed in 2011, a policy was created, and it was very good, very formal, I think, in its language. And out of the policy committee's recommendation was to actually perhaps remove some of the resolution style language from the policy, which is actually a recommendation Daisy had made, which was a very good one. Also some other changes that the attorney had noted that were not necessarily needed. As always, the policy is presented in a format where you can see what the changes were, additions and subtractions. Anything else in particular you would like to add, ma'am, about this particular policy?
I would just say that I thought the committee did a great job, and as was noted by the committee members, things have changed a lot since this policy was written in terms of how people relate to each other and trust each other more. It was right at the time of the merger, and people didn't know each other, and so I think that the new version is reflective of this more positive atmosphere that we now live in. Thank goodness.
As denoted, she noted in the packet, you do see two versions of the policy there. The one that was originally presented to the policy committee that incorporates attorneys' comments in green, and then there's the one that were made after the policy committee met on August 8th, which was the second policy version you see in your packet, and that would be the one that the policy committee is requesting for approval.
Any questions on this policy? Okay, now may I have a motion to accept the policy committee recommendation for the changes to the meeting by electronics means policy?
So moved.
Moved by Daisy. We have a second?
Second.
Second by Gwen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Did that cover both policies? Is that right? Is that right?
We did, yeah.
We did the first one and then we just
thank you,
so
Paul.
that should cover both
Thank
policies.
you. A lot of work.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Nope, you're welcome.
And thank you,
ma'am.
policy committee.
It's a great committee.
Yes. Policy committee rocks. I'm not even on it. Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. Committees and appointments. This is for discussion and action requested, and Dee is going to start our discussion.
Great, thank you, Laura. So, yes, we did, as I said previously, discuss committees a little bit at the orientation, and so we're going to talk a little bit about them more now, and just in terms both of specific a specific appointment to the executive committee, and just in general, kind of the role of committees. The committees that we have, and there's a list in the packet. We don't have a lot of committees. We used to have more, but when RAILS was first formed, I think the best way to describe it, and Jane could probably help too, is that there were so many issues to be resolved because of the merger. The systems did things differently. So there was a lot of work that was done by staff and board committees to kind of bring things together. For example, we had a very active delivery committee that was meeting, and there was also a state library, a statewide delivery committee that was meeting because of the same reason. For example, all the systems counted delivery differently. Or maybe not. Maybe they didn't all count it differently. And I'm sure you're thinking, how could you count it differently? It's 1, 2, 3, 4. But whether you count it when you pick it up and you count it when you deliver it, right? Or maybe you count it when you pick it up and then you count it when you bring it back to the delivery sorting site, and then you count it when it leaves the delivery sorting site, and then you count it when it gets to the library. Well, all of a sudden you're counting one item 4 times. This obviously is a problem. So, so that is a true to life, that's a true life example of some of the things that had to be dealt with. Also, the delivery committee, our delivery committee talked about outsourcing and whether it was a good way to go. And so then that committee kind of, they kind of did their they did what they had been charged to do. So then we have the Consortium Committee, but then we realized we needed a resource sharing committee because we were talking about consortia and we were talking about delivery, but not in the full context of resource sharing. So my point is that the committees have evolved and they will continue to evolve. I think that, if we want to have more committees, that's great. I just want to be sure that we have the right committees, that are the right use of Rails board member times and the right use of Rails staff time, and that they tackle issues that are important and appropriate. Laura and I have talked about this. I think that it would be very useful to have a committee about the unserved. The resource sharing committee talks about that, but I think that's a big, complicated issue, and it would probably be a very useful discussion to have with a broad group of people. So I could talk about committees, for a long time, but I won't. I will just say that this is the opportunity for you all to ask questions or to make suggestions or anything else that you want to say about committees.
I have a question, Dee. Oh.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Yes.
The Resource Sharing Committee appears to be a little different. It doesn't appear to be a strictly Rails committee, is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean.
It has ex officio representation from the State Library and Heartland, but all the members are Rails members.
They are, okay.
The voting members.
More than just board members,
Right.
they include member library representation.
Thank you.
Yes.
And you and I had talked about my participation on that potentially. I didn't know.
Yes, and Gwen has kindly given up this wonderful opportunity.
Thanks,
I think that's great. I think that's great. So yes, there's 2 board representatives, and so instead of Gwen going forward, it will be Daisy and Christine Barr, and Gwen is still on the Consortium Committee. So.
Okay, thank you. And so the chair is Sharm, and she's from Heartland, right, or no?
No, she's from
That's Rails. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So as we think about board development, and if you recall on the our job description, it said participation in a committee, and with as few committees as we have here, that may not be possible.
Right. Good point.
That's something we should keep in mind on that.
Yep.
And are there other opportunities for board members to, be involved in some of those kinds of things?
Yes. And, one of the best ways for board members and member libraries in general, and I'm going to put Greg on the spot a little bit here. Whoop, his head popped up. Is the Illinois State Library Advisory Council, which is a subcommittee of the. It is a state library committee from which many committees flow, and that. I don't know what the status of that is, but that is a very important committee, and it has not met because part of it is that there's a lot of vacancies on it. So that is one opportunity. Conferences, as I said, but you make a good point, and perhaps we should look at the job description too. And like I say, I'm not against in any way committees. I just want them to be useful to everybody, and especially to the members. So,
if they don't work, or if they don't meet, or if they don't have a purpose, why,
Right. That's all.
Oh, given Michael's point, since I am on 2 committees, if somebody else were interested.
Well, I believe Michael and I are the only 2 that aren't on the committee. Is that right?
I'm not on a committee.
You're not. And you're not.
Okay,
It's-
so the
the
newbies.
All the newbies.
The
So
majority.
unlike the executive committee barely meets, so you're on a committee, but you're really not putting much work in there because it just doesn't meet that often. Because there's not the issues to drive the meeting. So I like the idea of creating a committee that's more of a working committee than like the executive committee, one that we're picking an issue and making some progress towards that issue. I do think the unserved is a good idea because that always pops up on our agenda, but we're just never really having the time to make any progress with it or really define what we want to do with it. So to me, that seems like maybe one of the more natural ones, given what we put in our plans. I have no problem with that. The issue doesn't directly relate to me, but I would be okay starting that committee if there were other people interested in this issue.
Well, and you know, we're going to be having, there's going to be a lot of changes coming, I think, related to delivery and to buildings. And, you know, there may be some, you know, board interest in that as well. So
how do we go about creating more committees or getting the right types and balance of committees?
Well, through discussion like this.
Right.
And then, you know, generally, you know, staff would work during the, you know, between the meetings to, you know, to make a recommendation, you know, to bring back to the board, and then you can discuss it and change it in any way you want.
My only other question is, like, the resource sharing committee, because it has members, not just board members,
Yes.
but so how do we get a feel from our members what may be an important committee to them too? Is that something we should be doing, or should the board kind of drive the committees and then go to the members for participation?
Well,
and we don't have to answer it all now. These are just some things
no, I'm
that
just,
are right.
I mean, I think the way that it has worked is that it's that all of a sudden it will be like, oh, we really need to have a way of discussing this.
Okay.
You know, it's like the issue kind of like becomes like, it kind of builds up, you know.
Right.
Would you say, Jane? I mean, it's kind of organic in that.
I would agree with that. I would say from a historical perspective, at the beginning of Rails, we had a lot of committees so that every board member could be on a committee, and the truth is, I would say at least half of them never met.
Okay.
And it
right.
kind of collapsed under its own weight, I would say. So there needs to be a balance.
Right.
Okay. That, yeah, see, that was before my time. So, but I think, you know, reflective of what was happening at that time too, is that, you know, the board members were feeling very, they needed to really be hands-on, beyond hands-on perhaps. And that was what was right for the time.
You know, to your point, Laura, you know, particularly the unserved, as we've had previous conversations, that's a long-standing issue that is probably not going to be fixed by one magical swoop. It would be an incremental approach, which we've seen this in the project with the county library district. And, you know, so I think there might be value to that particular committee because that's not an overnight, you know, problem to be fixed. So that's going to be a long-standing concerted effort. And, you know, maybe it is appropriate for Rails to have a committee that focuses on that for the long term.
Well, maybe that would give us that one more working toward an issue type committee, and we could kind of just rest with having that one more until something organically popped up and we might need another one.
That makes sense.
Seem like a plan?
Mm-hmm. I think, you know, the standards was a big, hard-working committee. That sort of, they finished, that the committee that developed the standards, they finished. Now there may be, well, there definitely will be at some point, some need for oversight of that work to be sure that it stays up to date, you know, kind of monitoring that. That I don't see that as specifically Rails, I mean, ultimately, because standards are supposed to be statewide, system membership standards, but that will be something else where the board absolutely will need to be involved in the oversight and the administration. So why don't we work on something for the next meeting?
Okay,
For
so
the unserved?
so would we just have to like formally say we need motions to add a committee? Is that how it would work? Okay, so it should just be an agenda item on
Yep.
the next. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, and for today, the executive committee, I think everything else is set. We have our OMA and we have all those officers we need. We've discussed the resource sharing committee, but the executive committee, and I think I put this, I talked to you about this, I think at some point, the precedent has been that the past president was also on the executive committee, but our past president is no longer on the board, so we can't do that. So I know that Dave Barry is willing to continue, at least he was the last time I talked to him, to continue serving on the executive committee, so that something that is determined, that seat is determined by the board.
Okay. Do we need a vote on it, or can?
Yes, we did. It does say action requested, and that was that would be the action that would be requested.
Okay. So do we do a roll call? Or?
Dave, are you out there? Do you want to do that?
Oh yeah, I guess we should ask him first.
I will make a motion to approve the committees as set forth.
Okay, that includes you as the, okay, that's a good way of doing
yeah.
it.
Right.
Very clever, yes.
Right. He is paying attention.
Yeah. Okay, Scott seconded it.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Great.
Okay. Good discussion. We will move on to the Find More Illinois proposed fee structure. And that would be Jane.
Well, last month, we presented the proposed fee structure to you, and that memo is recapped in your packet this month as well. Just as a quick recap, two basic parts to the fees. One-time implementation fee, which would be a pass-through of vendor charges that will vary according to the library's integrated library system status and library type. So we are prepared to do customized quotes for the implementation fees. And as noted in the packet too, Rails is also prepared to provide assistance in the form of paying the implementation fee for shared catalog consortium within Rails. And we will also assist early adopters with standalone integrated library systems. We have about a little over 30,000 set aside for that. Then there will also be an annual membership fee, and that we are recommending that be scaled according to annual collection expenditures. I did add a clarification to that chart this time, that expenditures from special grants, like the book grants from the state library, would be excluded because those would be one-time additions. What we're looking for is something that's based on standard collection expenditures. So, are there any questions?
Question. That one-time implementation fee, do you have any kind of clue as to what that would look like for like a small, medium, large,
Yes. Let me pull it out so I have it accurate. It's not so much small, medium, large. It depends more on the consortial setup.
Mhm.
So for a standalone library, generally would be $800. Schools would get a little bit of a break if it's just a single one. If it's more than that, if it's like for an entire school district, it's $1,500. And then the per library fee is much lower. It's $150. Except for schools, those are $50. So schools do get a bit of a break.
It's still very reasonable.
Yes.
Very.
Yes.
Very.
It's designed to be very reasonable, and I think there's
Any other questions?
a number of standalone. I mean, your library is a standalone.
Yes.
Your library is a standalone. Your library is a standalone.
Yep.
I think this is.
I was expecting like thousands.
I was too, Michael. I'm very pleased.
We
with
worked
this.
hard, and I will say that the vendor worked
Yes.
equally hard to come up with something that would make it as affordable for as many libraries.
As I said, my approach has always been to keep it very high level with goals. And in the last plan, we didn't call them objectives; we called them strategic initiatives. But it was really the same thing. And I would and what I for this plan, which also gives you some, information on the process that we took to get here. There are a lot of bullet points, which would not be included in the plan that you would approve, which I hope that we'll do next month if we can. Those were really kind of examples of what we would do under these objectives, some possibilities. Some of them we certainly will do, some of them maybe not, some of them will sort of age out, kind of. And the reason that I recommend doing it that way is that every year we have to do an annual action plan because that's what's in the area and per capita grant. There is what are you going to do this year? And it's very much based on what the priorities of the state library and our strategic plan, which are very much in sync. I don't know. I'm happy to take you through it or discuss any questions you might have. How would you like to? Yes, Wesley.
Recording.
Yay! Great, just in time for a brilliant discussion of the strategic plan. So, I mean, one of the things that you asked for in the, that was mentioned in the survey was some discussion of the, kind of the long range picture, the strategic plan. Obviously, this plan is very much based on member needs. We did an extensive listening tour, and we heard a lot about, resource sharing and how important that is, how important delivery is. We heard a lot about how important training is. Also, a lot about libraries worrying about the future, libraries worrying about how to stay relevant, libraries being, helping libraries to tell their story about why they're important, why they are still relevant. We also heard things that we'd never heard before, which were kind of very disturbing, which was we worry about keeping people safe in our buildings. That had never come up in any time I ever did any kind of plan or survey. Nobody ever said that to me in 35 years, so that's kind of depressing. But it's a real thing. We were over at the Peoria Public Library the other day. I don't know if Randall's still here. We were talking. They've had 3 overdoses in that library, and so this is absolutely reflective of what the members have said they need us to do. It is also very much a continuation of our current plan because that has been successful and I think responsive. This is an update. So resource sharing, training, helping libraries tell the story, being a good organization ourselves, being good stewards, being an excellent organization because that means we do a good job serving members. It all comes back to members. So what else would you like me to tell you? What would you like to say about it? What questions do you have?
I was interested in hearing more about the interstate delivery and the statewide library card.
Oh, sure. Well, the interstate delivery is a dream of Jane's. And there are real possibilities with that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and this is being done among other states. Gwen has some experience, I think, in Colorado, correct? Because Coloradoans is ready to do some interstate delivery. I think with our Find More Illinois program, as that grows, there's some interesting possibilities. Wisconsin uses the same vendor, so does Indiana. I haven't had any conversations with Indiana, but we've had a few conversations with Wisconsin. We have a group that meets annually, and I think they might be interested, or at least want to discuss about it. Not necessarily expensive in that it's mainly a matter of finding a place where that interchange can happen. From what I've heard from other states, a lot of times the hardest piece is getting the libraries to agree and accept on different packaging and labeling standards. But I think it has possibilities.
Is RiverShare still in existence?
Well,
Not
I'm
in
not
that.
sure. That only Iowa libraries, and we no longer do delivery with them.
Got it.
But yes, there was interstate delivery in that sense, yes. And I mean, you can tell when you go to the Quad Cities that the dotted line between Illinois and Iowa doesn't exist even, it's all about where they live. So that's a good reason to expand the resource sharing if we can. Other questions?
The statewide library card, is that
I'm sorry.
also a dream of yours?
The statewide library card. Yes. I think that's related to the unserved also, and it's something we've talked with amongst ourselves about. We've talked with the state library about that too. It comes up with members in terms of making it easier for users to use libraries. That would be a big one, but it's something worth striving for.
That's very interesting to me in Aurora because we have pockets of unincorporated land within our city limits.
Yep.
And of course, like most of the suburbs, we're surrounded by, we're bordered by other libraries.
Yep.
That sounds great.
Yep.
So does any other state have it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, you can talk about, you can phrase it as a statewide, and think of it as an actual library card that everybody can have, or you can think of it more sort of as like a virtual statewide that, somehow everybody has access to any library, which is more common than an actual piece of whatever plastic that gets you into. I mean, I can speak in Massachusetts, but we didn't have any unserved because we didn't have cornfields that turned into villages that or unincorporated parts of villages or cities. Paula has been a great teacher to me of how one of the ways that this situation got worse, I guess, in terms of unserved pockets being more dispersed. so that, everybody had access to public library service, and the state library told us that every library had to serve everybody equally. So therefore,
Coming to this state from California,
right?
I was at San Jose Public for 6 years, and we didn't care where somebody lived. We'd give a card to anybody who was a resident of the U.S.
Right. Yeah. And yes, and in Massachusetts, the Boston Public Library was the library of last recourse. Somebody would, the joke was, it was a library of last resort, But yeah, I mean, anybody could get a library card
Right.
there. Yeah.
So much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Colorado, they didn't have a separate card, but many of the libraries on their cards, they had a little thing that said CLC for Colorado Library Card. So you could take that and I worked at a private college, and we accepted that.
Yep.
And people from other colleges or public, and it was all worked out as to what the privileges were and so forth.
Right. Right. There's always details, but something to dream about.
I like this dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well,
So, anything you want me to change, or and obviously you can all email me or call me, or I included in between the next until the next meeting, and if we can't approve it next meeting, that's fine too. We were just hoping to get it done so we could take it to ILA, because Mary tells me that members are actually asking about it, so which is great. And we just got great feedback. We really did. So,
well, I like it because I participated in the listening tour, and I was kind of wondering what was happening with that. So I think it puts some plan in action from that listening tour. So I'm glad to see it. And I'm glad it had so many elements from the listening tour in it that I could see. So.
Yep, good. Oh, good. That's great to hear. And those quotes are actual quotes from people in the listening tour, which I think really speak to how it's reflective.
Okay, thank you, Dee.
Sure.
And I think you are also going to present our board development topic of the value of conference attendance.
Yes, and Mary may help me. I don't know, because this is one of the. It's about a little bit about what her department does. We do attend a lot of conferences, particularly as we find that being an exhibitor is great, because we are at these conferences and we get to meet a lot of our members. It's very efficient, and there's a lot of them in one place, and that's great for member engagement. We always learn new things, and we're able to deliver information as well. We also Rail staff are very frequent presenters at conferences, and always well received. That includes board members. I know that Dave Barry, I believe, is doing a
ILA
presentation at
yes.
ILA, and certainly our past president Kate Hall did some, and maybe others that I. Are you doing?
I've got 2 presentations.
All right, great.
Don't come to them.
Yeah.
I've also got one coming up.
All right, nice.
Great. Yeah. Also, we often sponsor conferences, so support them financially, because we feel that is these people are going to these conferences and they're learning, and one of our jobs is to train member library staff. So the work's being done for us, and so we feel that we should support that as well. So we provided you with a list of some of the things that are coming up, and As to the professional development opportunities for board members, we do have it in our policy that we support board members in attending conferences. Obviously, can't be flying people over to IFLA or to ALA necessarily either, but we do go to, we have participated in National Library Legislative Day in Washington, D.C. every year. Dave went a couple of times as president, and Vice President Kate Hall went as president. Have you ever been, Jay?
No, I have not
but
been.
it's a great opportunity for trustees in general, and Dave could certainly talk about that. It's great for understanding the relationship between the federal funding and the state funding. As Greg mentioned, we're going to be at the Association for Rural and Small Libraries next month. That's going to be a big deal at the State Library, I'm sure. Very busy days for you guys. Then there's a lot of library conferences that you might not be aware of. The Health Science Librarians of Illinois, of course, ILA. It's in Peoria, which is great for us because it's a really central location in our system, and we see lots of members. Peoria is a great place to visit. The school library conference, we go to that. Reaching Forward, we go to that. ACRL is next year in, I don't know if it's in Ohio, maybe? Cleveland, which I'm thinking that maybe some staff should go to that because we have a lot of academic library members and there'll be a lot from the Midwest. So we try to always balance the expense of going with the benefit of, how many members we'll get to see it and talk to. So it's a really important part of what we do, and a lot of staff work at the booth. The finance department staff love to work the booth. Mark works the booth. He has delivery office hours, which is always a very popular feature. So I highly recommend that board members attend conferences when it's convenient and sounds interesting to you all.
So I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
One is, so if I am going to a conference and like Rails isn't exhibiting there or anything, should I do anything to promote Rails or get together with Rails people that are going to be there or anything?
Yes, if you can.
Let Rails know that I'm going?
Yep.
Or? Okay.
Yep. Sure. We were able to support Laura going to SLA.
No, I went to...
you didn't go to SLA.
I went to ASEE.
Okay,
which is the American
right.
Society of Engineering Education.
Yep.
And we did it as a cost sharing.
Yes.
I had my
Right.
corporation paid part, and then
Right.
Rails paid part too. So.
Right, which is,
Right.
great. So,
Right.
Yep.
So that's my other question is, what is the mechanism for support? So say, I want to go to ILA, but I don't have any other money to go. What do I do?
I don't recall specifically if we have any kind, I don't believe we have any sort of mathematical formula in there, but I think, cost sharing has been effective, and also ILA in Peoria is not an expensive, some of it is very simple. It's like, that's a good return on investment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk. Yep. It's good for the board members to go. It helps you be better board members. Why wouldn't we support you? So, some libraries can pay, some libraries cannot. Other questions? Anything you want to add, Mary?
I would just point out that Greg was talking about Trustee Day at the Illinois
right.
Library Association Conference. There is information in this document about that, if you could attend that, that is.
Because you're all trustees.
Learning opportunity.
It's also
as well.
on the day that I have my 2 presentations.
Oh, and you don't want us to go to those, so that's
Exactly.
perfect.
So
Right?
that works out well. I won't be at trustee day, but I'm glad you won't be.
Well, we won't take that personally, Liza.
Dee, I have a data question that I don't need an answer to today. I'm just curious when looking at Reaching Forward and Reaching Forward South, how many Rails members go to Reaching Forward and how many go to Reaching Forward
We
South?
have data on that.
Do we? Woo.
Yeah, I don't. Mary may actually have it at her fingertips or in her brain. I'm not sure,
You know
but
how many come to Reaching Forward South? It's about 10.
right.
Reaching Forward is a
10
lot more than that, I'll just say.
Where's Reaching Forward South?
This year it was in.
This last year it was in,
Was it in Springfield,
No,
Gwen or Debbie or
I
nope?
was trying to think if it was Carbondale.
I thought it was Effingham.
Effingham.
That's right.
That's yeah.
That's in Heartland.
That is not a good return on investment. That's the but you know, and we have certainly discussed that. But then, you know, I mean.
we do try to get more of our members to go, because that's in the, southern part of the state usually, or the southern part of our area. And one thing we have heard about Reaching Forward is that some of our libraries that are located farther south are not able to go.
Right.
So we've really tried to encourage libraries to go to Reaching Forward South. We sponsored libraries to pay their
Right.
expenses. It just hasn't worked out thus far.
Right.
In terms of getting a big return on investment, as you say.
Right.
I will be remiss if I don't say this for my family members that Effingham though is Central Illinois and is not Southern Illinois.
I know. That is absolutely true.
The southern part of Rails.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll be allowed at the family table.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a learning experience and it's evolving in terms. We try to do the best we can with it, and okay, we'll sponsor it. We'll do it this way this year. This year we sponsored specific people, which I think are libraries, as you said.
And then a few of them didn't show up. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, we are trying though. We definitely want to reach out to as many members as
Sure.
possible to have these educational
Right.
opportunities.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will move on to Rail Board member reports. And the purpose of this is to let the board know of any events or programs going on in your library that you would like to tell us about. Anyone doing anything they'd like to share?
Well, the big thing coming up at Peoria Public Library is we are going to close our main branch for a major HVAC renovation.
Oh.
About 7-8 years ago, we did the facelift, and now we're doing the behind the scenes because this part wasn't done when we did the facelift. But we have to, from September 17th until December 3rd, we're closing basically the collection area of the library. The library itself is remaining open for staff. Third floor, which is where the administrative office and technical services are, we get to keep working. And then the lower levels, which also houses our local history collection, is also going to remain open, but that collection doesn't circulate, so this works out well. And I was here before the networking event talking to Kendall and James about, okay, what do we need to do? Do we shadow everything? How's this work?
Yep.
So I think we've got things set. So that's just the big thing that's happening.
Your branches will be busy.
The branches are going to be extremely busy, and
Yep.
they're going to be very, very staffed because the staff that can't work in the reference and circulation are going out to the branches. So
Right.
they're going to have plenty of people for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll get spoiled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are having our 80th anniversary celebration at the Caterpillar Library. Caterpillar's had a library for 80 years.
Wow, that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we're planning a fairly big event, and then that's in November. And the other thing we are working on is myself and one of my coworkers, who is a member of SLA Illinois, are working with Dan Bostrom from Rails, and we are going to do a special library networking event in November for all of our. Where the hope is to reach out to Rails special library members and SLA special library members, and just have something where just us special because I don't like the word special libraries.
We gotta get those pinned by then.
Right. We were talking last night about changing it to specialty libraries. That just sounds so much better.
Miranda has a whole campaign.
Yes, right. Yeah, she's our campaign manager back there. So
That's
that's
a good point.
what we will be doing
That's great.
in the next couple of months. Anyone
Do you
else?
want some staff?
Yeah. Maybe. Okay. Anyone else have anything they want to share? Board member news? Okay.
August is our kind of our month of special events at my library. We had our Comic-Con on August 4th and had over 1,000 people show up that day.
Wow.
Awesome. And a week later was Grandparents' Day Out. Had 361 show up to that.
361.
361.
Right.
And the week after that, we had a murder mystery fundraiser event, which is in support of our Author Fest coming in October. We got Sarah Paretsky as our keynote author, and over 50 other local authors will be there that day as well. So lots of events going on.
I went to the murder mystery fundraiser. It was lots of fun.
We've placed our perennial question on the ballot, referendum question for November. So this is try number 5.
Maybe the force be with you.
Yeah, this is try number 5.
Pinnacle news that we are, as I think Scott's talked about at previous board meetings, that we've been implementing My Library Rewards on a consortial basis, which is a program where patrons who check items out can then earn rewards for coupons and discounted businesses. Fountaindale will be going live in a few weeks, so that'll complete the consortial implementation of My Library Rewards, which is exciting. We have a lot of continuity, obviously, in our consortium, so patrons easily go from community to community, so they're going to have a really, I think, great experience with lots of great rewards, including a pony ride somewhere. One of my staff members is really excited about getting a coupon for a pony ride. And Pinnacle is also looking at a consortial implementation of a chat service, too. That's something we're considering, so we're kind of excited about that. Yeah.
Any other library news? Okay, we will move on to agenda building for the next Rails board meeting. So we will have the approval of the annual report at the next meeting and the strategic plan also. Does anyone have anything else they would like to add to the agenda for the next board meeting?
Were we going to discuss the possibility of forming a committee?
Yes.
Yes.
The Unserved Committee, And for discussion, I had reached out to Gwen and Christine Barr because we represent the only 3 non-public library affiliated board members, because the rest are public library or public library trustees, on whether they thought it was worth talking about board diversity. And it seems like they both felt like it was. So I think we will maybe start to discuss board diversity at the next meeting.
Diversity in terms of type and diversity in terms of diversity in general.
I had brought it up in terms of type, but then there were some comments made that maybe just diversity on many levels could be discussed.
Right. I just wanted to show people. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, sure. So, just a little background. So the representation, I'll call it representation. The current representation is, some of it is set in the administrative rules or in the law, I'm not sure. I guess the administrative rules. We have to have at least 8 public library. We have to have at least 8 public library trustee seats. and we have to have at least one per type, special, school, academic. And then, and so then we have 4 at-large seats. That's the way it currently is. Yeah, just so everybody knows.
I think it would be useful for that conversation to actually have data about past election efforts
Sure.
and in terms of recruit diversity and where, how many people of different types, at least talking in terms of that representation aspect, have been able to recruit as candidates.
Absolutely.
On a more basic level, I'd be interested also in just the membership percentages overall by type.
By far, there are more school libraries.
Okay.
And then I think the next is public, the next is academic, and then specialty.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And I would, and associated with it, obviously, is recruitment. And maybe there's better ways of doing that, and also, not that many people. And Mary, don't you dare take this the wrong way. But it also comes down to who votes.
Right.
And the public library, they are big voters. So, yeah. So anyway, but we'll talk about it. I think it's a great topic.
Okay. Anyone else have something they'd like to put on the agenda for next meeting? Okay. With no more business, I thank you all for your attendance. I call this meeting to adjournment at, oh gosh, I got this on military time. 2:44. My phone slipped me over to military time. I don't know why. 2:44 p.m., August 24th, 2018. Thank you very much.
Thank you.